Scientists say one of the worst pains a human can feel is cluster headaches, but they clearly never have played horror games before, because I've found 10 deaths so brutal that your nervous system would basically file a restraining order against your body before shutting down forever. Also, my dog Flapjack says you should subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, he's not going to pay me this month, because he is in fact my employer and he is abusive. Alright, let's start with what might surprise you. The chainsaw decapitation from Resident Evil 4. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is getting your head sawed off the least painful thing on this list? Well, congratulations on having functioning brain cells, because that's exactly the right question to ask. See, one clean swipe across the neck, head goes flying, game over. Sounds horrific, right? And visually, yeah, it absolutely is, which tells you something about how effective it was at traumatizing people. But here's the thing about chainsaws and your nervous system. They're stupidly efficient killing machines. The moment those teeth hit Leon's neck, he's got maybe half a second before his spinal cord gets completely severed. And once your spinal cord's cut, well, that's pretty much game over for pain signals getting to the brain. So what actually happens in that split second? First, Leon feels the initial impact. Imagine the worst paper cut you've ever had, except it's across your entire neck. It involves rotating metal teeth. The chainsaw tears through skin, muscle, and all those nerve-rich areas around the throat for about 1 second. Every pain receptor in his neck is firing at maximum capacity, but then the chainsaw hits the vertebrae. Now, chainsaws are designed to cut through thick wood, so human bone doesn't exactly put up much of a fight. The moment it severs the spinal cord, all communication between Leon's brain and body just stops. No more pain signals can get through because the highway between his nervous system and his brain just got cut in frickin' half. What's really messed up is that Leon might actually be aware that his head just separated from his body, but he can't feel anything below the neck because, well, there's nothing to feel anymore. The whole thing probably takes less than 3 seconds from start to finish. 3 seconds of absolutely mind-bending pain, followed by either instant death or a very brief moment of, well, this is awkward, before his brain shuts down from lack of blood. Compare that to what we'll see later in this video, where people are conscious and suffering for minutes at a time, and suddenly Dr. Salvador's approach starts looking almost merciful. He's not trying to torture Leon, he's just trying to kill him as efficiently as possible. The chainsaw is a power tool, not a torture device. Well, at least not here. So yeah, Leon getting killed instantly is gonna look gentle compared to what happens when you're torn apart. In Outlast, Chris Walker is huge, like your mother. We're talking about a guy who could probably bench press a small car and use it as his warm-up routine. This is not someone you'd expect to get overpowered by anything, let alone turn into human confetti in under 2 seconds. But that's exactly what happens when the Wall Rider shows up. This thing is basically a swarm of angry nanites that decided violence was the answer to every question. Walker grabs Miles, thinking he's about to have himself a nice little murder session. And then suddenly he's airborne, getting pulled apart faster than you can say, oh I'm getting pulled apart. Now, dismemberment sounds terrible, and I would know, it absolutely is. But Walker's death might actually be one of the most merciful ones on this list, which should tell you how bad things get later. The whole ordeal lasts maybe 2 seconds tops. One moment he's standing there being a massive jerk, the next moment his arms are over there, his legs are somewhere there, and his torso is currently underneath you at your floor while you're eating dinner watching this video. I have cameras in your walls, I know. Your nervous system wasn't really designed to handle getting quartered. When Walker's arms get ripped off, his shoulder joints would dislocate first. That's a sharp, intense pain that shoots down your whole arm. But before his brain can even register that sensation, the muscles and tendons are tearing apart, which creates this burning, stretching feeling. This same thing happens with his legs. Hip joints pop out of place, thigh muscles get shredded, and every nerve in his lower body starts screaming at once. You ever had a leg cramp? Well, now take that and times it by 5,000. It's not fun. Under normal circumstances, any one of these injuries would be enough to put someone into shock, but Walker's dealing with all of them happening at the exact same time. Here's where it gets interesting though. The human brain can only process so much pain at once before it just gives up. When you're dealing with trauma this severe happening this fast, your nervous system basically throws up its hands and says, nope, I'm out. It's not that the pain isn't there, it's that your brain literally cannot handle processing all those signals at once. Just like my brain cannot handle processing social interaction at once, and I just sit there staring non-verbally at a cat. Plus, Walker's spine probably gets damaged almost immediately when the wall rider starts pulling apart. Once your spinal cord gets messed up, again, you're gonna lose feeling in whatever body parts are connected below the injury. So you might feel his arms getting torn off, but by the time his legs go, he might not even register it. The blood loss alone would knock him unconscious within seconds. When you lose that much blood that quickly, your brain just kind of shuts down to protect itself. It's actually kind of thoughtful of your body to do that for you, considering the alternative is staying awake for the whole experience. Walker's death is basically the horror game version of getting hit by a freight train. It's absolutely brutal to watch, but the victim probably doesn't suffer as much as you think they would. The wall rider isn't trying to torture him here. It's just removing an obstacle as efficiently as possible. Walker just happened to be that obstacle. The worst part for Walker was probably the split second when he realized what was actually happening. The moment of, oh, this is how I die, before everything went black. So yeah, Walker barely had time to process dying. But getting your head split right open is going to be a different story. Because in Resident Evil 7, Jack Baker takes a very direct approach to problem solving. The guy sees something he doesn't want around anymore, picks up the nearest garden tool, and makes it go away. In this case, that garden tool happens to be a shovel. The thing he wants gone is someone's entire face. When Jack swings that shovel at the deputy's head, or potentially Ethan if you're having a bad day and bad at the game, he's not going for style points. This is pure brute force applied with surgical precision to the most vulnerable part of your skull. And by surgical precision, I mean he's trying to split your head open from the front like it's a watermelon and you're between a goth girl's thighs. Now, your skull is actually pretty tough. I would know. I actually jumped up and hit my head on that door frame like 2 days ago when I was doing some maintenance on my fish tank, and I hit it so hard I fell down and laid there for like 5 minutes, and I still have a bump on my head as I record this. It kind of hurts to touch. I don't think I have brain damage because I don't know if I had a big enough brain to actually damage. Yeah. So yeah, your skull's pretty tough. It's designed to protect your brain from exactly this kind of situation, but Jack Baker doesn't really care about your skull's design philosophy. He's swinging a heavy metal blade with the enthusiasm of someone who's really committed to his hobby of facial reconstruction. The moment that shovel connects with your forehead, you've got about 1/10 of a second to experience what scientists would probably call a really big ouchie. Your skull doesn't just crack, it splits right down the middle. We're talking about your face basically unzipping itself in real time. Here's what happens in that tiny moment before your brain shuts down forever. First, the shovel blade cuts through all the skin and muscle on your face. That's an instant searing pain across your entire forehead and nose area. Your face has tons of nerve endings, so this feels about as bad as you would expect getting sliced open with a garden tool would feel. But then the blade hits bone, and that's where things start to get really unpleasant. Your skull fractures with enough force that you can probably feel the cracks spreading through your head. It's not just breaking, it's splitting apart. You know that feeling when you crack your knuckles? Ow! This is that, but with your entire skull and way more violent. The worst part is that for just a moment before the blade cuts into your brain tissue, you're still conscious. Your brain is still working and still processing what's happening. So you get to experience that wonderful moment of realizing your head is literally coming apart. Once the shovel cuts into brain tissue though, that's game over. Your brain controls everything about you being alive and conscious, unless you live on Twitter. So when a piece of metal starts slicing through it, all of that just stops working. No more thoughts, no more pain, no more anything. The deputy in the game gets his head split open from mouth to forehead. If you think about it, that means Jack had to swing hard enough to cut through teeth, jawbone, nasal cavity, and skull all in one go. That's not just strength, that's someone who's been doing this for years. The whole thing probably takes less than a couple seconds from impact to death, but that 1 second induces feeling your entire head break open while your brain is still working well enough to understand what's happening. It's the ultimate moment, except you don't get to finish that thought. So at least Jack's shovel was quick, because bleeding from every hole you have takes forever. Because in Silent Hill, Lisa Garland discovers she's been dead this whole time, and her body decides to have what can only be described as the world's most horrifying breakdown about it. Instead of just accepting this information and moving on with her afterlife, Lisa starts bleeding from everywhere. And I mean everywhere. Blood starts pouring out of her eyes, then her nose, then basically every other opening her body has to offer. It's not a gentle trickle either. We're talking full-on gushing Taco Bell diarrhea, which raises some serious questions about where all that blood was hiding before this moment. Fun fact, if you didn't know, your eyes aren't supposed to bleed. They're pretty sensitive organs. And when blood starts coming out of them, doctor's gonna tell you, man, that's gonna hurt. The blood itself irritates all the tiny nerves around your eyeballs, creating this burning, stinging pain. It's not just gross to look at. It actually feels awful. Trust me, I would know. And I know that's almost becoming a meme with you guys in the comments, but when I was in grade 6, I had eye surgery done, and this wasn't like LASIK. This was like a serious eye surgery for my muscles in my eye. I was born with like a thing that went wrong. Whatever. I had to have like actual go under surgery on my eyes. And when I woke up, it literally hurt to have any bit of light touch my eye. It hurt so bad. I had to wear sunglasses for like 2 months just until I was better. It was ridiculous. Don't have stitches in your eyes. It hurts. But this is just the start of Lisa's problems. Blood coming out of your nose means something is very wrong inside your head. The pressure required to make that much blood pour out of your nasal cavity suggests major internal bleeding. We're probably talking about blood vessels in her brain just bursting open. Now, most people would pass out pretty quickly from this kind of blood loss. Your body has safety features built in to prevent you from staying conscious while you bleed to death. But Lisa's situation isn't exactly normal, so she gets to stay awake for the whole experience. She starts panicking, which makes everything worse. When you panic, your heart rate goes up, which means the blood comes out faster. More blood means more pain means more panic, and suddenly you're trapped in this horrible cycle where your body is actively making things worse for itself. It's like all the times I'm on flights and I'm watching horror movies or I'm playing like a horror video game on my Steam Deck. I used to be really bad when it came to like needles, blood, and like people's limbs getting cut off. And one time I was watching like an episode of The Boys where a guy cuts off his arm, and I fainted on the plane because it's a hot area. It scared me and I fainted and it wasn't fun. Yeah, you can make fun of me. I'm a 6'2" guy who's afraid of that sort of stuff. You can make fun of me. It's okay. I've come to terms with it. The really messed up part here, though, is that Lisa knows what's happening to her. She's not confused or in shock. She understands that she's falling apart and there's nothing she can do about it. She runs to Harry and pounds on the door, begging him to help her. But what's he supposed to do? Put a band-aid on her eyes? Lisa can feel her body breaking down from the inside. Every blood vessel that bursts sends a wave of pressure and pain through her head. When you have internal bleeding in your brain, it feels like someone is slowly inflating a balloon inside of your skull. The pressure builds and builds until you can't think straight. The worst part is how long it takes. She doesn't just drop dead. She staggers around crying and bleeding for what feels like several minutes. That's several minutes of experiencing your body basically melting while you're fully aware of what's happening. Eventually, the blood loss gets to be too much and she collapses. Even then, she doesn't die immediately. She lies there in a pool of her own blood, still conscious, still suffering, till finally her brain gives up. Lisa's death isn't about violence or trauma. It's about helplessness. She can't fight back, she can't escape, and she can't even die properly. She just has to endure her body destroying itself while everyone around her runs away. So internal bleeding is awful, but having your spine slightly compressed is going to be a next level of pain that we shouldn't even talk about. Because in Outlast, Miles pushes Trager out of that elevator thinking he's safe, but Trager just can't let it go. He lunges back towards the doors right as the elevator starts moving, and suddenly his upper body is stuck between 2 floors while the machinery keeps doing its job. What happens next is basically a masterclass of why you should never stick any part of yourself between moving mechanical parts. The elevator doesn't just stop because there's a human torso in the way. It keeps moving with the relentless efficiency of a machine that was designed to lift heavy things, not to worry about the feelings of a crazy surgeon. Trager's midsection becomes the unwilling participant in a very one-sided argument with several tons of moving metal. His ribcage, which was perfectly happy being ribcage shaped, suddenly finds itself being redesigned into something more pancake shaped. Fun fact, but ribs aren't supposed to bend inwards, but the elevator has some strong opinions about that. The crushing starts at his lower ribs and works its way up. Each rib snapped enough force that he can probably hear them breaking over his own screaming. Broken ribs hurt enough when you crack one falling off a bike. Trager gets to experience 8 or 9 of them snapping at once, plus the special bonus of having them driven into his internal organs. Yippee, fun! His spine is getting compressed from both sides, which means every vertebrae in his back is being crushed together. Your spine has all of these little discs between the bones that act like cushions. When they get squashed, they basically explode, sending all of that cushiony stuff into places it's not supposed to be. This creates pressure on every nerve in his back, which sends pain shooting through his entire body. The real party starts when his organs get involved. Your ribcage exists to protect all the squishy important stuff inside, but when the ribcage itself becomes the weapon, those organs are in trouble. His liver turns into mashed potatoes, his lungs get punctured by his own ribs, and his stomach probably ruptures. The worst part is that this isn't instant. Elevators move slowly. This whole crushing process takes several seconds, during which Trager is fully conscious and aware that his body is being systematically destroyed. He can feel every rib snap, every organ tear, and every nerve get pinched. His lungs fill with blood from the internal damage, so he starts drowning in his own bodily fluids while also being crushed. It's multitasking, but the worst possible kind. He can't breathe properly, he can't move, and he can't escape. And he can't even pass out because the pain keeps him awake. Eventually, the damage becomes too severe and his body gives up. But those few seconds of being slowly compressed by an indifferent machine probably felt like hours. Trager went from thinking he was about to murder someone to experiencing the most drawn-out mechanical death possible. The elevator just keeps going after he dies, completely unbothered by the fact that it just turned a person into paste. That's the really disturbing part, because the machine doesn't give a f. So yeah, mechanical crushing is gonna hurt, but fire is gonna burn your pain receptors clear off. In Silent Hill 2, Angela walks up that burning staircase knowing exactly what she's doing. This isn't an accident or a surprise attack. She's choosing to walk into literal hell because, in her words,
"For me, it's always like this."
Which is probably the most depressing thing anyone has ever said before choosing to die by fire. Fire is one of those things that starts bad and gets progressively worse in ways you didn't think were possible. When Angela first steps into those flames, her exposed skin immediately starts cooking. The heat hits her face and hands first, creating that sensation you get when you open an oven door, except instead of pulling back, she keeps walking forward. First-degree burns feel like the worst sunburn of your life. Your skin turns red, starts stinging, and every nerve ending in the affected area starts screaming. But Angela doesn't stop there. She keeps walking deeper into the fire. Those first-degree burns quickly become second-degree burns. Second-degree burns are where things start getting very unpleasant. Your skin starts forming blisters as the heat literally cooks the tissue underneath. The pain becomes this deep, robbing agony that makes you want to claw your own skin off. Every step Angela takes up those stairs means more of her body is experiencing this. But then something interesting happens. As the fire gets hotter and Angela goes deeper, the burns become third degree. And funny enough, third-degree burns don't hurt. You'd think that's a good thing, right? Oh, that's nice. I can just skip over 1 to 2 and just not feel any pain. Well, the reason they don't hurt is that your nerve endings get completely destroyed by the heat, so you stop feeling pain altogether in those areas, which sounds like mercy, except it means the fire is literally burning away the parts of your body that let you feel anything. And the catch is you can't skip over 1 to 2. You're gonna feel all that pain just very quickly, and then you're gonna be dead. The cruel irony is that while some parts of Angela stop hurting, the areas around those spots hurt even more. You end up with this patchwork of numbness and incredible pain covering your entire body. It's not relief, it's just a different kind of torture. And then there's the smoke. Angela is breathing in superheated air that's full of toxic fumes. Her throat and lungs start burning from the inside, and every breath feels like swallowing molten metal. She's basically being cooked from both directions, outside and inside. The worst part is that Angela probably stays conscious longer than you would expect. Smoke inhalation usually knocks people out pretty quickly, but in a supernatural burning staircase, normal rules might not apply. She might not be aware of her hair catching fire, her clothes melting to her skin, and her eyes drying out from the heat. Fire deaths are supposed to be quick because of carbon monoxide poisoning, but Angela seems determined to experience the full process. She climbs those stairs step by step, feeling every degree of heat increase, every layer of skin burn away, and every breath become more difficult. The tragic thing is that Angela's already been through so much trauma that walking into fire might actually feel familiar to her. She's been burning her whole life. This is just the first time that it's actually literal. When she finally disappears into the flames at the top of the stairs, it's almost a relief. Not for her, but for us watching, because to see someone do that to themselves is the true horror of this game. If you've played this game and you know her story, you understand every single reason why she's doing what she's doing. This is a really dark, disturbing story. Honestly, if you want to have a good night's sleep tonight, don't look into it. But that's probably going to make all of you go look at it. So have fun with that. So yeah, fire is going to destroy your nerves eventually, but getting split lengthwise means feeling every organ fail all at once. Because in Silent Hill Homecoming, Adam Shepard gets tied up between 2 poles, which you might think sounds like a fun Friday night. It's not, because then Pyramid Head shows up with his massive knife, and suddenly Adam's about to become a very unwilling participant in the world's worst magic trick, getting sawed in half, except there's no putting himself back together afterwards. Pyramid Head doesn't mess around with his executions. When he swings that great knife, he's going for maximum efficiency. The blade starts at Adam's groin and travels straight up through his entire body, essentially turning one person into 2 people, except both halves are dead. The knife enters at the most nerve-dense area of the human body. Your groin has more pain receptors packed into a smaller space than almost anywhere else, which makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint. You do not need me to spell that out. You are a smart person. Basically, the reason there's so many nerves is because feel good to shaboink and boink.
Make baby, human species go goo goo gaga.
Science 101. So FYI, you really don't want anything bad happening down there. So when a giant blade starts cutting through that area, every nerve ending in this region fires at once. For all the men watching this video, gene zippers. Multiply that by 5,000. Everyone just winced. But this is just the beginning of Adam's problems. As the knife moves upward, it's essentially creating a roadmap of human anatomy, except instead of a gentle educational tour, it's more of a violent demonstration. The blade cuts through his intestines, which rupture and spill their contents into his body cavity. That creates an immediate burning sensation as stomach acid and other digestive fluids start eating away at tissue they're not supposed to touch. Moving up, the knife hits his liver, kidneys, and spleen. These organs are basically giant blood sponges, so cutting through them means massive internal bleeding. But Adam doesn't just get to bleed out peacefully. He's still conscious, still feeling everything because the knife is moving fast enough to cause maximum damage, but slow enough for his brain to register each individual trauma. When the blade reaches his ribs, it doesn't just cut through them. It cracks them apart with enough force to send bone fragments into his lungs. Now he's not just being bisected, he's also drowning in his own blood while bone shards puncture his airways. The really awful part is when the knife reaches his heart. Your heart is basically a muscle that's been beating non-stop your entire life. And when a blade cuts through it, you get to experience that muscle going haywire. It doesn't just stop. It spasms and convulses as it gets destroyed. Finally, the blade reaches his skull and brain. But by this point, Adam has experienced every major organ system failing in sequence. His nervous system has been sending maximum pain signals for what feels like forever, even though the whole thing probably takes less than a couple seconds. The worst part about vertical bisection is that it's comprehensive. It's not just one traumatic injury, it's every traumatic injury happening at the same time. Adam gets to experience kidney failure, liver damage, heart attack, lung collapse, and brain trauma all at once, which is almost as bad as me having to experience social anxiety. Come on guys, I'm the biggest victim here. You guys have to lose your arms out there. I have to deal with talking to people. Who really has it tougher? Pyramid Head's method is almost surgical in its precision. He's not just killing Adam, he's demonstrating exactly how many different ways a human body can be destroyed in a single motion. So yeah, vertical cutting hits everything at once. But what if we used a pickaxe? Because in Outlast 2, Marta swings her pickaxe with the enthusiasm of someone who really believes in her work. And her work apparently involves turning Blake into a human shish kebab using a farming tool that was definitely not designed for this purpose. She drives that pickaxe straight up through his groin and doesn't stop until it comes out near his shoulder. This isn't your standard stab wound. Marta's essentially creating a tunnel through Blake's entire torso, except instead of using proper excavation equipment, she's using a pointed metal stick and a lot of upper body strength. The pickaxe enters at the absolute worst possible starting point for obvious reasons, and then takes a scenic tour through every major organ system. The initial entry point is what makes this particularly awful. Getting stabbed in the groin triggers every evolutionary alarm your body has. This is the area your nervous system is most paranoid about protecting. So when something sharp goes through it, every pain receptor in the region loses its mind. It's not just the immediate stabbing pain, it's also this deep, nauseating ache that radiates through your entire pelvic area. Now, I can't speak for the women out there because obvious reasons. You ever been kicked in the nuts before? It hurts. It makes you want to puke. It makes you want to cry. It makes you want to yourself. It makes you want to talk about all the trauma that happened to you in 4th grade that you cannot mention to anybody. Yeah. Marta's not stopping there though. The pickaxe tears upwards through Blake's intestines, which immediately start leaking their contents into his abdominal cavity. Your intestines are full of acid and bacteria that are supposed to stay contained. When they don't, they start dissolving whatever tissue they touch from the inside. So now Blake's not just dealing with a giant metal spike running through him, he's also being chemically burned from within. As the pickaxe continues its upward journey, it punches through his diaphragm, which is the muscle that lets you breathe. When that gets punctured, Blake's lung collapses on one side. Suddenly he's trying to breathe with one lung while also dealing with the sensation of drowning as blood fills his chest cavity. The pickaxe keeps going and hits his liver, which is basically a giant blood filter. When you stab through a liver, it bleeds profusely because that's what livers do. They're packed with blood vessels. So now Blake's hemorrhaging internally while also suffocating and being dissolved by his own digestive juices. Then comes the shoulder exit wound. Pickaxe has to break through his collarbone and shoulder blade to get out. which means shattering bone and tearing through all of the muscle and nerve networks in his shoulder. Entire arm goes numb as the nerves get severed, but only after sending one final burst of agony up to his brain. The really twisted part is that Marta lifts Blake off the ground with the pickaxe still in him. His own body weight is now working against him, making the wounds wider and deeper as gravity pulls him down onto the metal spike. Every movement tears the wound open more. Blake gets to experience every step of this process while hanging in the air, skewered from groin to shoulder, feeling his body systematically fail while Marta presumably admires her handiwork. The whole thing probably takes less than a minute, but that's a very long minute when you're experiencing multiple organ failure while suspended on a farming tool. So yeah, getting impaled is gonna hurt everyone at once, but being slowly dissolved alive is gonna take forever. Because in Resident Evil Village, Ethan Winters gets eaten by a giant baby, which is probably not something he had on his weekend plans. This mutant fetus thing grabs him and decides he looks tasty enough to swallow whole. Now, unlike most video game deaths, this one happens from Ethan's perspective, so you get to experience every delightful moment of being eaten alive. Unfortunately, some people probably think that is a good thing, and that makes me scared for future generations. I'm not shaming anybody, but like, please. The baby starts by cramming Ethan's legs into its mouth. Your legs have a lot of bones that don't normally bend in the directions this creature is forcing them to go. So right off the bat, Ethan's probably feeling his ankles and knees getting crushed as this thing's jaws clamp down. It's not just biting, it's actively pushing him deeper into its mouth using those oversized baby hands. Now, it's not really clear if this thing like swallows them all at once or like bites them or whatever. I don't think it has teeth from what I can remember, but you just know that since it's supernatural and ugly, it's gonna gum him to death. It's gonna crush you with its gums. But once Ethan's waist deep in Monster Baby, the real fun begins. The creature's throat muscles start contracting around him, squeezing his entire body from all sides. Like, imagine the worst hug you've ever received, except it's wet, hot, and designed to push you towards a stomach full of acid. The pressure is enough to crack ribs and make breathing nearly impossible. But breathing becomes the least of Ethan's problems once he hits the stomach. This isn't a normal stomach. It's a mutant digestive system that's probably way more efficient at breaking down human tissue than it should be. The moment his skin touches that stomach acid, every exposed part of his body starts burning. Stomach acid is already pretty nasty stuff. It can eat through metal given enough time. When it touches human skin, it creates this deep chemical burn that gets worse every second. But Ethan's not just getting splashed with little acid, he's completely submerged in it. His entire body is being dissolved from the outside in. The acid would hit his face first, burning his eyes and nose. If you didn't know, your eyes are particularly sensitive to acid, so they start burning immediately. It's not just painful, it's also blinding. Ethan can't see what's happening to him, which somehow makes the whole experience worse. Fast forward a little bit and Ethan is still getting digested, because the worst part is that this thing takes time. Getting eaten isn't instant death. Ethan remains conscious long enough to feel multiple layers of skin burn away and experience his body slowly breaking down while trapped in complete darkness inside a giant mutant baby. Ouch, chemical burns hurt everywhere, but surgical mutilation is going to target your most sensitive areas. As an Outlast whistleblower, Eddie Gluskin has turned torture into performance art, and his victims are the unwilling audience. This guy doesn't just kill people, he operates on them without anesthesia, without medical training, and basically without their consent. He's basically playing surgeon, except his goal isn't to heal anyone, it's to turn men into his idea of the perfect wife, which is already a terrifying concept. That's terrifying. Because then not only do you have to go through all that, then he's gonna try to kiss you. That's terrifying. He's ugly. Gluskin straps his victims to tables and goes to work with a buzzsaw. Now, most people use buzz saws for cutting wood or metal. Honestly, they're not very good at it. So like, imagine that now on your body. Gluskin uses it for cutting off body parts that evolution spent millions of years making extremely sensitive to pain. He's targeting the one area of the male body that has the highest concentration of nerve endings. And as I've talked about a ton in this video already, it's sensitive. It's hypersensitive. Your body has more pain receptors packed into that small space than almost anywhere else. So when he's gonna start his surgery, his victims experience pain that's literally off the charts. Every millimeter that buzzsaw cuts through sends maximum pain signals straight to the brain. But Gluskin takes his time. He's not rushing through this procedure. He's calculated. He's careful. He's almost gentle in his approach, which makes it infinitely worse for his victims. A quick cut would be horrible but brief, but his slow and deliberate technique means his victims get to experience every second of the process in excruciating detail. The buzzsaw creates this horrible combination of cutting pain and vibration trauma. The blade doesn't just slice, it tears and shreds tissue while sending shockwaves through the entire pelvic region. The victims can feel the vibration in their bones, in their spine, radiating outward from the point of contact. Blood loss from this type of injury is severe and immediate. Instead of passing out quickly, the victims often stay conscious because of the extreme pain. Their nervous system is so overwhelmed with pain signals that it keeps them awake for the whole ordeal. It's a cruel irony. The pain is so bad that it prevents them from escaping into unconsciousness. Then there's Gluskin's own death, which delivers the ultimate poetic justice. He gets hoisted into the air on a meat hook that enters through his groin and travels upward through his torso. So he experiences the same type of trauma he's been inflicting on others, except his version lasts longer. The hook would tear through all the same nerve-rich tissue that he's been destroying in his victims. He hangs there, suspended by his own weight, feeling the metal hook widen the wound every time he moves. The hook acts as both the cause of trauma and the thing keeping him from falling, which means every attempt to escape just makes the injury worse. And he remains conscious long enough to grab Waylon's hand and say,
"We could have been beautiful."
Even while dying from genital impalement, he's still thinking about his twisted romantic fantasies. That's dedication to being completely insane. This whole scenario is horror gaming's most effective example of making the punishment fit the crime. Gluskin spent his time carefully surgically destroying the most sensitive parts of other people's bodies. His death gives him this chance to experience that same type of trauma, except with the added bonus of gravity working against him. It's the ultimate taste of your own medicine. So there you have it, 10 ways video games prove humans are basically walking pain receptacles with anxiety disorders. Like and subscribe if you don't want any of this stuff happening to you. And if you want more videos just like this one, you should watch the one on screen right now because it's another video just like this. And kids, don't test any of this stuff at home. It's not gonna end well, and I don't wanna get sued.